Welcome back to the cryptowrld channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and the inflation numbers today just came in worse than expected. We're at a 40-year high for inflation in the US, which caused a dump in the stock market today, and this also caused crypto to pull back as well, and Ethereum specifically breaking below key support. But Bitcoin, on the other hand, is holding up relatively well, and I'll be talking about all of that and so much more later in this video. Definitely stick around. First of all, before we get into the charts today, we need to talk about inflation because the CPI data just came in today, and long story short, it was worse than expected based on consensus and the trading economics forecast, which were both predicting an 8.3% year-over-year inflation rate when the new CPI data came out today. But instead, what we actually got today was an 8.6% year-over-year inflation rate, which is actually the highest we've seen in around 4 decades. Now, if consensus and the trading economics forecast were only off by around 0.1 or 0.2%, meaning that if inflation was at around 8.4 or 8.5%, it wouldn't have been so bad because it would mean that March was potentially still a peak in inflation at 8.5%, but because we have 8.6% inflation year over year right now, this is now a new peak in inflation higher than what we saw back in March, which now obviously tells us inflation definitely did not peak in March like Jerome Powell actually said. In fact, Jerome Powell, who is the chair of the Federal Reserve, basically said that inflation has already peaked back in March and now we're beginning a slow decline in inflation, but of course that was before we got the recent CPI data. So what does all of this mean for markets? And well, basically having this increased inflation rate coming in with the recent CPI data means there's now an increased chance of the Federal Reserve being more aggressive with their interest rate hikes and tightening monetary policy. And technically speaking, that is bearish for markets, but the next couple interest rate hikes are most likely going to be 50 basis point hikes anyway, with now the slightly increased possibility of a 75 basis point hike. And based on market expectations, the next few 50 basis point hikes have basically already been priced into the markets, but a 75 basis point hike may not have been priced in yet, which means we could see more downwards pressure if we do end up seeing a 75 basis point hike as a result of this increased inflation figure that not many were expecting based on consensus and the trading economics forecast. So we will have to wait and see what happens at the next Fed meeting, which is actually next week. So definitely make sure you're subscribed to this channel with notifications on so you do not miss out on these update videos. And also check out my Twitter. Make sure to follow me over on my Twitter for real-time updates outside of these videos. And the link to my Twitter is in the description down below and also in the pinned comment. And looking at the effect that this bad news had on the stock market, this right here is the Nasdaq 100 index on the daily time frame. And obviously it had a very negative effect. We saw quite a decent dump in the stock market today and also yesterday leading up to this event. And this recent dump in the stock market could be some investors starting to price in a possibility of a 75 basis point hike or another 50 basis point hike beyond what the market was expecting, like a 50 basis point hike later in this year. But of course, if you watched my video yesterday, as soon as the inflation numbers came out, you would have expected more downside price action, especially in the stock market, because what I said in yesterday's video is if inflation comes in above 8.3%, that is where we could see some more bearish price action. But what is really interesting is while the stock market is playing out a decent sized dump, the Bitcoin price on the other hand is holding up relatively well, because at least as of right now, at the time of recording this video, the price of Bitcoin is still within this price range that we've been in basically over the past 1 month, compared to the stock market, which is almost reaching back down to its lowest points we've seen this year. And just before I get into the Bitcoin and Ethereum part of this video, I'll quickly mention the fact that there is a massive trading competition that only happens 1 time per year, and it's happening right now. The regular viewers here on the channel would know that I very rarely promote anything in these videos, so that you know that when I do shout something out in these videos, it is something that is worth your time. And so basically, this annual trading competition is the World Series of Trading, and there's up to an 8 million USDT prize pool this year. And this massive prize pool is split up between squads and individuals. And right now, I've already set up a squad in this competition named Cryptoworld, and we already have 8 members in this team. And if you scroll down the bottom of this page, you can see how the prize money is actually distributed. And you can see right here that just by being a member of my Cryptoworld team, if the Cryptoworld team places well, then just by being a member in that team, you can actually get a share of this multi-million-dollar prize pool if our team places well once again. And then if you're one of the top traders in the team, you basically get more prize money if our team places in the prize money. And the more traders we have in our team, the more chance we have of winning this competition. And also, it's worth mentioning that the first 10 members that join the cryptoworld team get a free $10. And we already have 8 members, so basically just the next 2 members that join get a free $10. And all of the requirements to actually enter into the competition are listed on this page as well. And I'll have a link to this page in the description down below and also in the pinned comment. In fact, it'll be the first link down below. And to join the team, you just sign into your Bybit account and click this join button right here on the left. But I want to make it clear that this is not for complete beginners to crypto. This is more for those of you that have a little bit more experience in crypto and have a good idea of how prices move and have a good risk management. And it is especially for those of you who trade crypto anyway. And once again, you can find a link to this page in the first link down below in the description and in the pinned comment. Now getting into the Bitcoin part of this video, this right here is the daily Bitcoin chart, and looking at this fractal that we have, which is basically the price action we saw in the middle of last year, overlaid on top of the current Bitcoin price action. And obviously what we can see more recently is this fractal should not be used as a perfect Bitcoin price prediction. Instead, it should be used as more of a rough guideline for what we could expect moving forward for the Bitcoin price. And basically what this is suggesting is potentially a bit more of a pullback, or at least more sideways consolidation for perhaps the next couple of weeks or so, before we could experience any decent relief rally or recovery in the Bitcoin price later on, perhaps in a month from now. And of course, this is only going off the Bitcoin bottom that we saw in the middle of last year. So if you're taking a look at another significant Bitcoin bottom, like what we saw at the end of the 2018 bear market entering into early 2019, this is the price action that we have right here. And what is really interesting is this fractal suggests something similar for the next couple of weeks or so, perhaps a bit more of a pullback, but not necessarily as much if we're following what we saw at the end of the 2018 bear market. But otherwise, mostly sideways price action moving forward over the next few weeks or so, which is very interesting because that's very close to what this fractal suggests, going off what we saw in the middle of last year and going off what we saw at the end of the 2018 bear market. Now, if we look at what happened at the end of the 2014 bear market, this is what we get if we actually resize the 2014 to 2015 price action to fit what we're seeing right now. And this also suggests something similar, going off the bottom that we saw at the end of the 2014 bear market entering into 2015, which is essentially a lot more sideways consolidation with the possibility of a little bit more of a pullback here in the somewhat shorter term. And so the main thing all 3 of these fractals suggests is potentially more sideways price action, relatively speaking, with a bit more of a short-term pullback is possible. And if you're zooming all the way out to the weekly Bitcoin chart, taking a look at the 1,000-day moving average and the 200-week moving average, and also the weekly Bitcoin RSI, right now the 1,000-day moving average is coming in at around 28,500, and the 200-week moving average is coming in at around 22.3k. And historically speaking, almost every significant Bitcoin bottom has occurred in between these 2 moving averages, talking about previous Bitcoin bear markets and also the March 2020 crash. We saw the Bitcoin price drop below the 1,000-day moving average and bottom out closer towards the 200-week moving average. And 2 out of these 3 times, we saw the weekly Bitcoin RSI enter into oversold territories, but in the March 2020 example, we did not see the weekly Bitcoin RSI enter into oversold territories despite the price action dropping all the way down to the 200-week moving average and actually wicking below that moving average very briefly. So technically speaking, according to pretty much the last decade of Bitcoin's price history, and according to these important moving averages and the RSI, we technically do have a little bit more room to the downside, but keep in mind the room to the downside isn't all that much compared to what we've already seen, because once again, the 1,000-day moving average is coming in at around 28,500, but historically where we've bottomed out is closer towards the 200-week, which is sitting at around 22 to 23,000. And just taking a look at the short-term Bitcoin price action here on the 4-hour chart, not a lot has happened over the past 1 day for Bitcoin, despite the stock market playing out a decent-sized dump. Basically, the main thing to talk about here is the fact that Bitcoin has dropped below this short-term line of support, sitting at around 29,500. But other than that, we've got significant support at around 28,500 as well. And as for lines of resistance, they have not changed. We still have this short-term line of resistance sitting at around 30.7k and a more significant level of resistance at around 32,500. And now getting into the Ethereum part of this video, this right here is the weekly Ethereum chart. Looking at the RSI in particular, this is almost entering into oversold territories for the first time since the end of the 2018 bear market, and that was the only other time in Ethereum's entire price history where we saw the weekly Ethereum RSI enter into oversold territories. So if this happens again, technically speaking, according to Ethereum's entire price history, this is a very rare opportunity to be involved in the markets. But once again, we're not in oversold territories on the weekly chart just yet, which means technically there is still some room to the downside, like what we saw at the end of the 2018 bear market. And if you're zooming into the shorter term Ethereum price action here on the 6-hour time frame, you can see that we did break below an important level of support, which was sitting at around 1740 to 1750. And we also had significant support at around 1700 exactly. And technically speaking, here on the 6-hour time frame, we have seen one confirmation with a candle close below this level of support at around 1740. And technically speaking, this is all we need for confirmation, but keep in mind, to be even more confident in the technical price target, which I'll mention in just a moment, we perhaps need to see a little bit more confirmation, such as a daily candle close below 1700, or if we could potentially see a retest of this previous line of support and confirm it as new resistance sitting at around 1740 once again, then in that case, that will just be extra confirmation of this break to the downside, giving us more confidence that the price target is most likely going to be met. But as of right now, with just one confirmation, there's relatively low confidence in the price target, even though this is clearly more bearish than bullish, obviously. And the technical price target for the breakdown out of this pattern is coming in at around $1,400 per Ethereum. And that $1,400 price target would only get officially invalidated if we see a candle close back above this line of previous support, which is potentially acting as new resistance at around 1740 to 1750 once again. And just giving you a quick update on the Ethereum short positions on the Bitfinex exchange here on the weekly time frame, we've actually seen a decent bounce today in the short positions after reaching almost all-time low levels, which basically means with the bad inflation numbers we got today, we saw more money flow back into Ethereum short positions on this exchange. But obviously, relatively speaking, these short positions are still very low according to previous history. And if you're completely new to the channel and you want more information about what this means for Ethereum, check out my last video on the channel. And now taking a look at the Ethereum versus Bitcoin chart here on the daily time frame, and this bullish divergence just does not want to play out, because technically speaking, we do have a bullish divergence forming with lower lows in the price action but higher lows in the daily RSI. But as of right now, this bullish divergence is yet to really kick in because we're still seeing a decent amount of bearish momentum. But technically speaking, a bullish divergence means that we're due to see reduced bearish momentum, for example, some sideways price action for Ethereum versus Bitcoin. But as I've been saying for a while now on the channel, Ethereum versus Bitcoin is in a much larger downtrend on larger timeframes, and this right here is relatively speaking in the somewhat shorter term. And so when I'm talking about this possible bullish divergence, this is only talking about potentially over the next couple of days or so. But if you're a regular viewer here on the channel, especially in recent months, you would know that I have been bearish for Ethereum versus Bitcoin on the larger timeframes, because right here we actually have a Wyckoff distribution pattern playing out. I won't be going too much into detail about all of that in this video, but basically this is the Wyckoff distribution schematic number 2, and I'm sure you can see that this is basically what we're seeing at the moment for Ethereum versus Bitcoin here on the weekly time frame. It's Wyckoff distribution playing out, which is basically a bearish pattern, and essentially we're entering into phase E of this pattern, where we could end up seeing a further retracement for the price of Ethereum against Bitcoin, which means Ethereum could continue underperforming against Bitcoin on the larger timeframes. And in terms of a possible price target to the downside, I'll be taking a look at our Fibonacci retracement tool from this swing low back in September of 2019 up to the swing high. And you can see that with this weekly candle, we're basically breaking below the 23.6% Fibonacci level and potentially on our way down to the 38.2% Fibonacci level, which is the second most important Fibonacci level. And that is basically the price that I am targeting for Ethereum versus Bitcoin if this trend continues. And not only is this an important Fibonacci level, it was also perfect resistance back here at the beginning of 2021. And by the way, this 38.2% Fibonacci level is coming into play at around 0.046 Bitcoin per Ethereum. And obviously there is no guarantees when it comes to this, but if this price target does play out, we could potentially see another 19 to 20% drop for Ethereum versus Bitcoin, which basically means Ethereum would be underperforming against Bitcoin by 19%. Or another way of saying it is Bitcoin could be outperforming Ethereum by 19% if this does play out. And once again, if you've been on this channel for a couple months now, you would already know that I moved some of my Ethereum holdings back into Bitcoin back around here or so. And so right now I am light on Ethereum compared to Bitcoin. I'm heavier into Bitcoin, and I am very light on the rest of the altcoin markets because this is a time in the market where altcoins perform very badly, obviously. But of course, that is nothing new if you've been on the channel for a couple months now, because this is basically everything that I've been talking about over the past 1 to 2 months especially. And make sure to check out one of these uploads popping up right here on your screen if you want to maximize your profits in crypto, even if prices are going down. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.